500 pages of nonsense. Hello, welcome back to my channel. This week I am going to be judging Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I did read Cinder. I think that was like my first video, and I thought it was okay. This book was recommended to me by a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Natalie. She's great. And this is like her favorite book. I'm pretty sure one of her favorite books. So she was super nice and was like, go read this. And this message is for Natalie. Natalie, I love you, but I did not like this book. I'm sorry. So I'm going to be tearing this book apart. So like, if you don't want to see that, that's okay. You can click away, it's alright. Thank you for providing me content. This is set in a post-apocalyptic future in which there are renegades and anarchists, the superheroes and the villains. It took me a minute to figure out. They hate each other a lot and often clash. It's set kind of after when a YA novel would typically be set, which is after the Renegades took over the city and defeated the anarchists. Nova, our main protagonist, is an orphan who is an anarchist and lives with the anarchists underneath the streets of a subway tunnel. She and the other anarchists hate the Renegades with a burning passion and would do anything to kill their leader, Captain Chromium. That is his name. That is it. Adrian is a renegade who is the son of Captain Chromium, and that's pretty much all there is you need to know about him because he's freaking stupid. So on to the non-spoiler review. I was so confused for a long time about who the renegades were, who the anarchists were, which was a big problem. They throw a lot of names at you and all of those names have secret identities or whatever, and it's way too much to remember. There were literally 2 prologues, and I had no idea what was going on. It was like one chapter that just kind of like started it, and then it said officially prologue. It was a large learning curve that was not handled very well because this is a pretty different world. There's a lot to absorb. It was not conveyed properly. Adrian, as you could have guessed, I don't like him. He is very pretentious and cocky, and he's the most stale character. He has no personality traits. He's just so arrogant, and he thinks he can do anything, and that everyone should be in awe of him, and he doesn't ever grow out of this. So Nova, we're always being told how fierce she is and how competent she is, and I'm like, okay, that's nice. Thanks so much for telling us that. And I'm just sick of it because every single time Adrian like looks at her, he's like, she has a fierceness in her eyes, a resolve in her jaw. What? There was just so much exposition that was just really repetitive and unnecessary. They would explain and re-explain and then reiterate and keep beating you over the head with the same point. Some of it was just so unnecessary and had nothing to do with what was going on and just didn't add to the story at all. And it could have been so much shorter if all of this random trailing off just had not been a thing, as well as all the info dumps, because in the beginning there's so many info dumps with so many characters that never show up again, so what was the point? They also spent a long time explaining things that could very easily be inferred and would be much better left inferred. Oh my god, the writing was so cheesy and indulgent and just... it was just so painful to read, and I felt like every other page I would be like, oh my god, the names were so bad, and they just added to like the cringiness factor of this book. Like Captain Chromium, what? This one girl, Nova, she puts people to sleep. That's her power. Guess what she's called? Nightmare. The plot twists are also poorly set up and didn't live up to expectations. They were very easy to guess. All the side characters had so much potential. So much potential that was wasted because they all just faded into the background and they served no purpose and didn't add much to the story, and they could have added so much. The romance. There's always a romance, isn't there? The awful trope of every guy and girl in a friend group has to be paired off is so apparent here, and it's so annoying. So in case you couldn't guess from how Adrian is described as a dark, brooding stranger in like the first chapter, he is clearly the love interest, and It is so bad. I care zero about them. The pacing in this book was also awful. The entire book just acts as a incredibly drawn out introduction. Nothing much happens. There's no goals that these characters have that are really established. They're incredibly vague and just kind of like, yeah, I guess we hate the Renegades then. The only goal that Adrian has, he doesn't solve because he apparently burnt all of his brain cells off as a sentinel. I'll get into that in the spoiler section. A couple of things that I did like was the potential of the side characters. I thought they were really awesome in theory. The grayness of the characters was also really well done, and I thought that was pretty good. Again, if Natalie is still watching, please close your ears because I'm about to reveal the rating I gave this book. So I gave this book 1.5 stars out of 5. I was like, I might give it 2, but then I like put it on my paper and I was like, oh, that's too many. So now we're going to be jumping into the spoiler review. So if you don't want to be spoiled, goodbye. I was so confused at the beginning. They would be like, oh my gosh, and here's Tsunami, but her real name is this, and oh my gosh, there's the Detonator, but her real name is like Ingrid or something, and like, here's all of the background stories to them. Hope you're remembering because we're gonna reference them later and not explain a thing. Like, why? I was confused as to what side the Renegades were. I thought the Renegades were the bad guys for a second because it was just not established properly and it was not explained thoroughly enough, even though there were 2 prologues. Love it when that happens. Throughout all of the info dumps, no information was given. How? How could you do that? How can you do that? In the beginning, she misses the captain in an assassination attempt because she was looking at a butterfly. She hates this captain because this captain is responsible for her parents' death. And she's been like training for a while to kill him. And she gets distracted by a butterfly.
Iconic.
No! How is that in any way, shape, or form realistic, first of all? And second of all, she monologues the whole time about very obvious things. She's like, I've hated Captain Cronium my whole life, even though we just had an entire prologue to describe that. I hate him so much that I want to kill him. Clearly, why else would I be up here on a roof with a gun? It makes no sense as to why she's distracted by this. She's just like, ooh, a butterfly. Yeah, really resourceful, really fierce, isn't she, guys? Adrian, like I've mentioned before, is pretentious and cocky and friggin' stale as, like, really old bread. He gets so worked up about how Nightmare beats him. Like, she beats him because he's a crappy person. I mean, he is, but, like, he's a crappy villain, too. Or hero, renegade, whatever he is. Because he's the Sentinel, which is the most pretentious name ever. And the thing is, no one knows he's a Sentinel, even though it's very obviously he's a Sentinel. He's kind of like acting as this vigilante, but then whenever anyone else is a vigilante, he's like, that's wrong! We need our codes! Like, my dude, do you not know what you're doing right now? Like, you just burnt off half of Monarch's butterflies or whatever, and out here being like, he thinks that everyone should just be in awe of him all the time. Oh my gosh, you can draw things and they come to life? Marry me right now. Here's a quote. He'd nearly forgotten about the girl, Nova, and the way she'd looked at Adrian when he'd fixed the clasp of her bracelet. Not like his handiwork was the most amazing thing she'd ever seen in her life. This man said, why is she not in awe of me? He said, why is no one like bowing at my feet? What is this? Everyone needs to be infatuated with you, Adrian frickin' nasty. Like I said before, Nova, who we've been told over and over and over again is incredibly fierce and resourceful, but only when it matters because sometimes she's got to be distracted by a butterfly while killing the person that, you know, is responsible for her parents' death that she's been training for 10 years. That makes sense. The exposition was so redundant and not needed. It didn't add anything to the story. It would have been so much shorter had the book just stopped giving info dumps and not constantly been redoing the same points over and over and over and over again. They spent so long explaining things that could so easily be inferred, and it just drags the scene on, and it drives me crazy. Like, really, Nova, do we need another 3-page long monologue about how you hate the Renegades? Like, do we really need that right now? Explain everyone's outfits in detail, please. I really want to know exactly how Adrian's clothes hang off, suggesting toned muscle. Like, please, go on. She literally spends so long describing every person in the room's outfit. Was that necessary? Was that really necessary? Did we need to know that? This author really does not know how to write little kids. I was reading it and I was like, has she like ever met a 6-year-old? Do you even know what those are? Nova is 6 years old and building a fully functional elevator in her dollhouse, which would have been fine because it's been established that she's just really, really good at like building things. So I could sort of believe that, even though like 6, like really 6. I will let that slide. Fine. But the thing is, as soon as she like gets it to work, her little 6-year-old self goes, hydraulic powered elevator. Success. What? What 6-year-old talks like that, huh? You've been through uncomfortable quotes with Lorelai, but you've never been through cheesy quotes with Lorelai. To the world, they were Hugh Everhart and Simon Westwood, superheroes, councilmen, founding members of the Renegades. But to Adrian, they were mostly his dads. They're actually like really cute though.
They should get extra points.
I'm not giving them extra points for the bare minimum.
Give it 1.75.
No. Honey is being described in this one. She never wore lipstick, only slathered them with honey, nature's best moisturizer. She reminded Nova, imagine, you're an orphan. Like, you're living in the freaking sewer, you're living in the subway system, and you're minding your own business. You know, hyping yourself up to kill someone. And this kid named Honey comes and tells you, honey is nature's best moisturizer. Can you imagine that? Imagine how sticky she must be. So Honey is being described here too. Nova couldn't help but notice how very different she looked now from her utter hopelessness mere hours earlier. Perhaps Honey only thrived when she had something to fight against. Perhaps they all did. He was the Sentinel, with more powers that had ever resided in one being before, at least as far as he knew. He was like no other prodigy anyone had ever encountered. He had been transformed. Really? Really? You're gonna do that to me? Adrian is describing Nova the first time he sees her in this one. It was the stance that struck him first. The way she held herself, like she was preparing for an attack from all sides. Like she welcomed it. The jut of her chin. Like that? Like Dr. Doofenshmirtz? Like, what? The set of her shoulders, feet firmly planted on the ground. Relaxed enough, but ready to fight. Who describes someone like that? Who, like, sees someone and thinks that? Like, you can just say she's hot. It's okay. Please, that's all I want. I want you to say she's hot and move on. Oh my god, I hate this one. Nova just beat the gargoyle, who can turn himself into stone, with, like, a paper poster thing, like, she wrapped it around his head and, like, yeah. Rock, paper, scissors, she said, hauling herself to her feet and brushing off her pants. Paper beats rock.
Maybe she's doing the cheesy stuff because, you know, superhero stuff sometimes is cheesy and she's doing it on purpose.
I don't know how anyone can write that and be like, I did this on purpose, this is amazing. Paper beats, oh my god. This isn't about wanting her back, said Adrian. It's not really about wanting answers either. If anything, I just want the same thing every renegade does. Adrian allowed himself a faint smile. Justice. And
I
you're
like that one.
See, but when you've heard him monologue about how he's the best person ever and he's been transformed, like, you're like, okay, man. The names. Oh, the names. Are you ready? If you have not read the book, you're in for a treat. So there's Captain Cronium, obviously, which is a disgusting name. And then there's Nightmare, who is Nova's sort of thing, which is such a basic name. Like, there was really no thought put into that. Also, there's Tsunami, who controls water. There's something better.
Sleep paralysis.
Sleep paralysis demon.
What if she could, like, create sleep demons?
That's way cooler. Aftershock, which sounds like a bad clone. And then there's Gargoyle and Frostbite. Wonder what they can do. And then there's Stingray, who, I'm betting you have not guessed this, has a stingray tail, which is really original. The plot twists were just so anticlimactic and just very predictable. It's clear that Ingrid is going to betray Nova at the funhouse, because what else is going to happen? Why would Ingrid be teaming up with Nova after she just was like, I hate you, you're stupid? She also puts way too much emphasis on Ace Anarchy, making it very clear that he's still alive. I was kind of proud about that, because I guess that from like the very beginning, the first in italics thing where they were like, Ace Anarchy, he's definitely alive. So I was kind of proud of that. But there's no way you can't know after he's like, yeah, so that helmet isn't actually like the real helmet, it's a fake, because it's got like this spike plunged into it to show how the captain stabbed him in the head or whatever. And she realizes, oh, this is a fake. And then she's like, well, where is the actual helmet? And she asks the Dread Warden, who has the only cool name of all of them. Anyways, so she's talking to him, and he's like, yeah, so actually he like kind of jumped into a fire, and like, you know, we didn't see him again. If there's no body, he's not dead. That's the rule. I don't know if y'all know that. There's no body, they're alive. By the way, she was like, hey, so like, can I see the real helmet? And he was like, yeah, sure, you might have to bribe the people taking care of it, but like, you can totally do that. And she was like, cool. And that was never followed up on. Like, she never saw the helmet. That was never mentioned again. And I was like, what was the point? It's also clear that Max takes people's powers away, but I wasn't too mad about that one because that one wasn't like too important. The main reason they just didn't have the oomph that they should have was, first of all, because they were predictable, but second of all, because you really didn't care about the characters because they had no traits. They were so boring. Why? Also, why is Adrian's team being entrusted with anything? They're like 16. When I was little, I would have been like, oh my god, they're so big, they're like 16. I'm almost 16. Don't trust me with anything. Why are they being put into situations when they're close to dying, when they're like still kids? Shouldn't they be having a childhood or something? All the side characters had so much potential and it was wasted. Ruby, Oscar, and Monarch could have been so great, but they ended up being practically non-characters because they were not used properly. All their dialogue was so bland, and none of them really did anything other than make everyone else just look good. And they just fell away once they were introduced, and they no longer became a part of the main action. Monarch was never a part of the main action to begin with. I don't know what she was there for. They were all just there. It was very disappointing. Their group as a whole was just not very close-knit. They didn't act like friends. The anarchists would have been so cool, but only Ingrid, the detonator, ended up really being a part of things, and everyone else, similar to the Renegade team, just kind of like fell away and just stopped being a thing. Once she went to the Renegades, then they were just kind of like, we're out, I guess. And I could have used way more about Ace and Nova's relationship. That would have been very interesting and helpful and really cool to see, but we got like 2 sentences. Oh my god, the romance. I care actually zero about the romance. Like I said before, the trope of every guy and a girl in a friend group needs to be paired off is very clear here. Ruby and Oscar were the only ship that I could actually see being a thing. They were the only ones that had any sort of banter or flirtation that didn't make me feel incredibly uncomfortable because they had history. They've like known each other for a while. Also, Oscar actually had a couple personality traits, which was helpful. Meanwhile, with Nova and Adrian, they got nothing. But the thing is, with the Ruby and Oscar ship, they were like established and then just kind of like thrown off to the side, and we're gonna forget that. What was the point of establishing them as a relationship and then not continuing that at all? Makes no sense. I care absolutely none about Adrian and Nova. They were stupid. I never rooted for them. I was never like, oh, they'd be a cute couple. Their personalities don't match because they have no personality to begin with. All the build-up and flirting was so forced and stiff and just painful to get through and very unexpected every single time it happened, because a flirty moment would happen and I'd be like, ew, and then move on and like forget about it because in between flirty moments there was nothing. And when the next flirty moment came along, I would be like, ew, I forgot about that. When you forget about a building romance, then it's kind of like a problem when it is like, oh yeah, by the way, they like each other. Just by like reminding you. It should be clear throughout every interaction that they have that they like each other, but they talk like computers, so there's no banter or really anything that makes me go, oh my gosh, that sounds so cute. Like, they're barely even friends. They don't have really any friendship to build off of. Part of why Ruby and Oscar were better was because they were actually friends to begin with. Adrian and Nova were just like, hi, haha, thanks for bringing me in from the trials or whatever. Thanks so much, ha 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 ha. I'm gonna get you sandwiches at like 3 in the morning because you never sleep. And we're like, whoa, what happened there? Whenever it happened, it made me so uncomfortable, and it's so hard to ship characters that just they don't have any sort of personality at all. I do appreciate though that it was left kind of open-ended. Nothing really happened, and he was like, would you go on a date with me? And she was like, I think my uncle's calling. And I was like, whew. So I was not subjected to read a kiss scene. So the Sentinel apparently burned up off everyone's brain cells because they never found 2 brain cells to rub together to figure out that Adrian was Sentinel and Nova was Nightmare. It was the easiest thing to figure out, and I'm gonna tell you why. Okay, but first, I've gotta mention that every single time he mentioned his tight gray suit, I pictured this Tick. If you don't know the Tick, this is what he looks like. I'll put a picture here. But I found that incredibly amusing, and it kind of got me through the book because every time he did that, I just imagined it really I thought it was really funny. Anyways, like, how do you not recognize each other's voices? They didn't disguise it at all. So Nova would come out as Nightmare and be like, what are you doing here? And Adrian was never like, Nova? Is that you? He never was like that. He was like, Nightmare, my enemy. Cannot find a single brain cell in this house. Oh no, where did Adrian go? Oh well, at least there's this incredibly mysterious guy named the Sentinel who just suddenly showed up and talks and looks exactly like Adrian. Gosh darn it, man, where did Adrian go? Like, oh no, did Nova fall down the funhouse chute? Gosh darn it, oh no, it's Nightmare. Oh gosh, where's Nova? She should be seeing this. In the council meeting, someone's like, we've got to follow the rules, otherwise we're no better than those anarchists. And Nova's like, because that would be terrible. And no one is like, huh? No one's like, maybe we should look into that because no one ever says things like that around here. Maybe that's something that we should investigate or even just think about. But no, we're just gonna ignore it and then continue wondering where Nova goes every so often. Also, the fact that Nova has almost no plan and is mostly just improvising contributes to most of the horrible pacing in this book. So first of all, the idea for her to infiltrate the Renegades comes out of the blue and is not built up at all, and it happens like 150 pages in or something like that. It's not been mentioned any time before, so what were those 140 pages that I read? What were they for? How has no one thought about this before? The trials are wide open. Anyone can walk in. So how has no one been like, you know what would be cool? If we just kind of like infiltrated the Renegades. Like, how awesome would that be, guys? Like, no one's ever thought about that before. Is everyone just stupid in this book? It would have been such a cool twist though if she'd realized partway a large proportion of the Renegades are actually anarchists. Didn't happen, so that's nice. And then it was page 236 and she still had no goal. She had no solid plan throughout all of it, quite frankly. The most structure that she had was find out about Max. And that was it. She really didn't report to anyone. She was mostly just kind of there winging it. You don't really see where this trajectory is going. You're just kind of along for the ride and just kind of, I guess we're doing this now then. Imagine a Harry Potter book and just like the arc of the story. So we've got the beginning. We know that he's going to defeat Voldemort at some point in time, except for like the 3rd book, but that's not important. It goes and it goes and it goes and it builds and there's like tension and all of that. And then he like finds Voldemort, defeats him, and then there's the falling action. So we know like he's got a goal to defeat Voldemort, and then he's got some smaller goals along the way. You can see how that story builds. But with this one, they're like, hey, infiltrate the Renegades for us. And she's like, okay, I guess. And then she goes to the trials, and then they chill. Like, I don't remember what happened. I couldn't tell you much of what happened. The next thing I remember, they went to a fun house, and it was 300 pages later, and I was like, what happened? So there was really no real building of anything. Adrian also doesn't have a goal besides finding Nightmare, which is established as infuriatingly easy to figure out because they don't disguise their voices at all. Now for the things I like. There's 3 things, and they're very short. So I enjoyed the potential of the side characters. This is where the list is starting. Potential. These ones are better, don't worry. That one was kind of a fake one. I really enjoyed how she did a pretty decent job of changing Nova's view gradually, because she kind of went from, oh, Renegades like really suck and I'm gonna kill them all, and it's just like, you know, I really can't really kill these people because I kind of know them. And then she was like, okay, maybe Renegades actually are onto something, but they're still kind of nasty, which makes sense. And now she's starting to stick Ray and everything. But then at the end of the book, she immediately goes and is like, Renegades suck. So what was the point of all that? Where was that going? And I did actually enjoy the grayness of all the characters and all the worlds, and how the Renegades were not perfect and neither were the villains. And that was actually kind of cool, and how all of the characters kind of were like on a spectrum. So that was pretty cool. I have a couple theories that I'm hoping are right, because I'm not reading the next books unless someone forces me to. So I think that the phobia guy is Ace. That is most certainly something that's going to happen. I'm pretty sure he can float, so that would make sense. I also think that the shoemaker that was Adrian's biological father is going to be someone we know, and he's going to come back. Because why would they mention that without like coming back on it? Unless that was just a very poor story building choice. I think he's probably an anarchist. I want to say it was Ace because that would make some sense. But it's also disgusting because Adrian and Nova would then be cousins, and I am not going through another Jerry Clay situation. I will not have it. I will not. Lady Indomitable, which is yet another really stupid name. I think she got her powers taken away and then was pushed or killed. Maybe by Ace because his levitation. Maybe he could use his telekinesis to like slam her into the ground or something like that. That is all I have for you guys today. I gave this book 1.5 out of 5 stars because I'm mean. Sorry, Natalie. Thank you so much for suggesting this book to me. I'm really glad you like it and found something you really enjoy. Also, so my next video is going to be a Keeper Lost Cities questions video. So if you have any questions that you want Ella, who's behind the camera right now, to ask me, then by all means put them in the comments. Otherwise, we're going to come up with our own and you guys will have to deal with it. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Next time's going to be my last video, so peace. Bye. To the world, they were Hugh and Everhart and... I'm in distress. It's a Thursday. It's been a long day, and I had to read that. I had to say that. Like, I had to say that.
Spoiler alert.
It's the spoiler section!
Stop it. Get some help.
The Sentinel. Really? I don't like it? Like, I thought I loved this book. This book is my baby. Oh my gosh.